What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Crypto Kindness channel. My name is Jeff, and with me today, I have the man, the myth, the legend, maybe the fastest growing Pulse Chain streamer with us, Ben Gage. How you doing?
I am fantastic. Appreciate you having me on. It was a great start to the day today,
Yeah, it
preparing for
is.
this.
It's a fun start. I was looking forward to this one. I felt like I owed you one because you had me on your channel and we did a great interview, and then I went and watched it, and my audio was atrocious. I felt bad.
No, it's great. Well, I definitely appreciate the invite to come back on, and yeah, like I said before, I've been following you for a little while now, so it definitely makes sense to stay relevant, in terms of all things Pulse Chain with you. I've kind of gone through your journey a little bit with your YouTube channel, so yeah, I'm definitely excited to chat and continue chatting going forward.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and we've got a good one today. I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. You posted a video. Well, first of all, let me say hi to a few people we have here in chat. We've got Miguel here. Thank you for being here. He kind of laughs. Is Pulse Chain worth the hype? That's funny. Um, Mointy says Pulse Chain worth 10,000x hype. Everyone deep insides know that. Now that's something I want to get into is the 10,000x. I'm going to write this down.
Yeah.
Um, just I'm getting ready to go. So big up to you to keep on the good work. Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here. And good morning, Humberto. Thank you for being here. Blessings from Miami. So Humberto has definitely seen some of my channel streams before. I always like to know where everybody's from. It's fun to connect with everybody from across the globe. And Joe is here. Good morning and blocked out. So we could say good morning to everybody in the chat, but really they're here to hear you today. So let's talk to you, Ben.
Well, good morning,
Um,
everyone.
Yeah, so first question. You posted a video, I don't know, 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, and you were all, like, jacked. You were so excited about this BlackRock announcement. They have tokenized one of their ETFs, if I understood you correctly,
Yep.
and, when is that gonna be available? Like, is it already on the blockchain? Is it already available for trading, and where can we find it? Just some
It
of that
is
information.
it is available. It's on Uniswap. It is available in certain regions. The US isn't one of those yet. But if you caught my last video, I mean, it's since the invention of VPNs, it's become a little easier to circumnavigate that. But I think this is one of the instances where they're kind of working out the kinks right now. They've been scared away, I think,
Mhm.
as have a lot of institutions or money managers, just based on the SEC and some of the hounding that they have done. But it's a step. It's a significant step in the right direction. And yes, and it's very easy to take news like this on and kind of sit on the fence a little bit in terms of what it could potentially mean and play it safe. But I really am bullish about this. I think that, if, and again, as mentioned in a previous video of mine, when someone like Larry Fink is open and candid with where he thinks crypto and where he thinks tokenization is going, we really should be listening because he is the one of, if not the biggest fund managers in the world. And BlackRock, are obviously one of the largest entities that are on the cutting edge of all things finance. And so, yes, I am very bullish about that. And I can bring a little bit of context there too, just in case some of the folks here haven't really seen that video or aren't yet aware of what is going on in the world.
Yeah, give us the, Cliff's Notes version on that. I don't know if you're old enough to know what Cliff's Notes are, but,
It's how I got through college.
yeah, me too, but I realized that a lot of our audience is like, "Why does he keep saying Cliff's Notes?" Anyway, I digress. So, yeah, give us the Cliff's Notes version on that video and your enthusiasm.
Yeah, well, sure, and so it's a huge step in crypto, where, as I say, one of the largest money managers in the world, the biggest entities, right on the cutting edge of finance, BlackRock, have taken the step to essentially tokenize real world assets, and they're not the only ones. But and by real world assets, obviously, we're talking about things like stocks, gold, real estate, basically finding a way to facilitate a kind of crypto dynamic from these assets that otherwise wouldn't have been available on the market. And so, what is the benefit to this tokenization? Well, it's bringing crypto benefits to these assets, right? It's things like fractional ownership, global liquidity, a lot of transparency. We're not limited by trading hours. There are so many benefits that fund managers want to leverage when, kind of looking at traditional assets or real world assets and bringing them onto a crypto format. And so this will change crypto and DeFi completely. We will bring a lot of stability, or I guess these assets will help bring a lot of stability to crypto, which has been something that we have fought against, every single cycle so far. There's a lot of scams out there, even scams that aren't necessarily as easy to locate as if you don't know if something's going to be a rug pull, like a BlockFi, for instance, but
Right.
but these real world assets, because they'll bring sustainable yield with almost no risk. This kind of will be convincing folks to get involved in the right things, which in itself is going to be great for the public relations side of crypto, but also DeFi in general. It's a massive leap forward in just the attention, the economic energy, and the interest that will be coming from traditional finance.
Well, I think, I mean, when others see that BlackRock is putting a toe in the water with crypto, it's going to be a cascading effect. They're like, oh, okay, well, if they're doing it, and it's not going to happen immediately, but
It's
it's
already
everybody's
started.
gonna,
It's
yeah, it's
already
already
started.
started.
There's a French investment bank, Societe Generale, who just kind of took out a stable coin loan with mortgage bonds as collateral, for instance.
Oh wow.
Singapore experimenting now with tokenizing their currency exchange. So they just did it with the Singapore dollar and the yen, and that kind of has gone off like they didn't expect. It's gained a lot
Right.
of traction. HSBC, as I mentioned in a previous video as well, they have they've started doing things. They've partnered up with who was it? I think it was the European Bank to bring the first sterling pound vehicle to play. So there is already that cascading effect happening, and that's only going to grow. I think that as a lot of these institutions really start seeing that there is a way forward here that isn't going to be waylaid by the SEC. And a
Mhm.
lot of this, while they could probably circumnavigate the SEC right now, just based on this kind of legal process being manipulated a little bit, or maybe manipulated is the wrong word. Circumnavigated is probably the best term. They are getting around kind of certain legal loopholes that are in place right now, and there's nothing illegal about it. There's nothing, it's totally within the rights of these entities to do this. But I think, as soon as we start seeing those floodgates open and the US in general starts seeing a lot more comfortability with these brands kind of being, making themselves available to US citizens, I think even the US is going to see some huge upside here. But we're not dependent on that. I mean, there's so much
No.
money, interest around the world that, if anything, the US has one of the best markets in the world, right? And so opening that up to folks in other geographic locations that otherwise wouldn't be able to partake in some of these investments, like the various stock exchange, real estate deals,
Right.
commodities and all that stuff. There's a lot of interest already there. So anyone who's thinking that this perhaps isn't such an exciting period because right now people are a little nervous, or not nervous, but people are a little hesitant, let's say, to take that leap forth in the US. I think if you're going to pioneer this realm, if you're going to pioneer into this niche, you're going to do it in the most streamlined way possible, which is right now outside the US. But there's so
Yeah.
many other regions that this is kicking ass in. We
Well,
can
the other thing to consider too is that these bigger firms, they've got ways to get around all that. And the big money, the JP Morgans, if they have high dollar investors that want to get into these type of things, and it's currently limited in the United States, come on, they know how to get around all that, whether it's operating with offshore entities or all this type of stuff. That's really that limitation, as far as I see it, only limits the little guy, which unfortunately, keeps the little guy from having access to the bigger gains. But I'm not worried at all that the big money is going to somehow be fudded out by the SEC guidelines, because they can get around it.
Well, of course, and when something like an entity like BlackRock makes a move, well,
Right.
they're not, like you say, they're not moving like us. They're moving markets, and so um, I think there's on my mind, there's only one way this goes. The writing is on the wall, and I do think that even as the little guys here, we can actually leverage this just by being an early adopter to this whole niche in general. I think that especially with the assets themselves, we're not necessarily so focused on these various assets. I'm more focused myself on some of the platforms, for instance, that will come into play to facilitate this tokenization. I'm more bullish on the protocols, on the decentralized exchanges, all the things that we are already excited about. This just
Right.
adds a lot of fuel to the fire. And when you're looking at institutions like who was it? It was BNY Mellon who put out a kind of a survey of sorts, and they got 91% of the money managers that they had reached out to state that they would be significantly interested in tokenized products. And so that alone is enough, right? And there is enough there to move mountains in this space. And I think that anyone
Right.
who is underestimating just how monumental the impact is going to be on crypto and on finance in general is not seeing the bigger picture. And it's funny, I put this video out. I put a couple video outs on this because there aren't too many people talking about this, if any. I don't think I've seen any. And I get it that it's really new, and I do have a bit of a closer connection with some of the folks who are on, on the floor there, who are getting excited about this for a multitude of reasons.
Right.
And it's funny seeing some of the comments come in, and it's almost like they're in disbelief a little bit. It's almost like some of these folks are, oh, it's could be just another conspiracy theory. And it's really not. It's there to see. There's full reason to be bullish about this, and more
Well,
bullish, I think, than we have been in the past.
sure. The biggest thing that I have never really understood over the last several years is, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier here, is basically the 24-hour clock is now available for trading, and that's weekends as well. I mean, how many times have we seen where companies strategically wait to give a bad announcement of some sort until 3:59 on
It's
Fridays,
trading
so that
one-on-one.
yeah, exactly. It's trading 101, and that will go out the window as soon as these type of ETFs and everything else is available on the blockchain, because it can be traded all weekend. So
So
now
much more
you'll
transparency
yeah,
available. That's the beauty.
transparency.
That's the
That's
beauty
a
of
great way
this.
to put it. That is a great way
Yeah.
to put it. So let's get into, how does this affect PulseChain? And the specific title of this stream is PulseChain worth the hype? And I want to address a few things here. First of all, we've got Rusty is here from the south coast of the UK. Fantastic. We got West Palm Beach, Florida, where it's nice and sunny, sending kindness. I appreciate that. France is in the house. We got Arizona from Hexagon. It's good to see my Hex friends in the chat here today. And we have a question here from Hex Freedom, or maybe it's an accusation. I don't really know, but the title says you're a hex hater, Crypto Kindness. Well, I respectfully disagree. And so here's what I like to do on my channel. I like to ask questions, and I like to ask a lot of questions. And it is important to me to understand both sides of the thought spectrum. Everybody can get on stream and say PulseChain is going to be the greatest, PulseChain this, everything, hopium galore. I think that too much hopium can be dangerous. If you're not thinking about the opposite side of any given, whether it's a trade, thought process, argument, you're missing out on half of the decision-making criteria that you need to have to make your decisions. I said that backwards, but criteria you need to have to make your decisions. So anything but a hex hater, my friend. I bought hex at 2. I bought hex at 3. I've got a limit order for some more hex. Hopefully, if we get down to 5, I'm all in, buddy. And PulseChain, much the same.
I
So,
totally agree with that, by the way. And I'm while I fall very strongly into the bullish side of the camp, I completely agree with your take on that, because people do need both sides of the argument there to make an informed decision. So you're being responsible. I am more on the side of kind of pumping out conviction and confidence about something, because we've looked at liquidity bonding. And, if you're a fan of PulseChain, if you're a fan of PulseX, you can't help but be a fan of Hex, because they are intrinsically linked. And I
yes.
think that, while this is simply a notion, I think that Johnny Chaos had come up with this. It was something that I have been digging into to try to find fault with. And I really don't think that we can get away from that whole ecosystem pulling each other up along that whole process. So, whatever climb we start to see over the next years and months. But yeah, I'm a huge Hex fan too. So.
And I think that, one of the differences between, say, you, who's, like you said, you've got friends on the floor, you're in the industry and all this type of stuff, is you have been exposed to, probably for years now, the negative thought process of these institution investors towards crypto, and you're seeing the change now. So you've already been exposed to that. You've experienced all the thought processes that have led you to this positive moment. And therefore you're coming out just like, okay, now's the time. I'm super bullish. Whereas
Yep.
a lot of the people that, myself, I'll just put this from my standpoint is I'm a dad. I've got busy kids. I've got my full-time job. I've got other things to put my time into and focus on. So I'm not exposed to all that you are. So I need to hear both sides of it from somebody that has that experience, which is why I'm really excited that you're on with us today. So, um, with that being said, I'm going to jump into it and I'm going to ask some hard hitting questions. And I think people are going to get mad at me. I don't care because you need to hear these answers. And I'm framing them all from a position of I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but I want to know for sure. So that way it can still trend me towards the super bullish feeling that I've had all along
Yep.
pertaining to PulseChain. We've got Texas in the house. That is awesome. Thank you for being here, PulseChain trainer. Funny story behind this guy. He's awesome. But Hexagon says PulseChain has more hype than any layer one I have heard in the past 6 years. Going to be insane. I don't disagree with that at all. I would say ZK Sync and the ZK rollups have quite a bit of hype with them coming as well, but I don't think they have as much as PulseChain. So the first question I have, and I'm going to frame everything from a basically, so those that are listening understand where I'm coming from. I'm going to have you sell me on PulseChain, and I'm going to come across as the negative disbeliever. Because I think that's important for people to have both sides of that argument, which we've already discussed. So, number one, you came in like a wrecking, like you were the Miley Cyrus of PulseChain streamers. You came in like a wrecking ball.
That's a great visual.
Yeah, we're gonna ask you to not do the naked wrecking ball thing, just for the sake of keeping your channel alive. But you had, I mean, you could have picked anything. Nobody had heard of you until you made your first videos. You could have picked anything. You could have picked Optos. You could have picked ZK Sync. You could have picked Polygon, Arbitrum, Optim. I mean, there's so many different layer ones or scaling solutions you could have picked, but you came to PulseChain. Why PulseChain, sir?
Well, I'll say this, and you're right. Some of my background has, or most of my background really. I'm not a full-time crypto person. I can't afford to be. I have to. For me, it's always important to keep an eye on all of the stuff that I've worked my entire life at. But also that macro lens is very important when looking at crypto. Different areas of finance, different areas of kind of VC, and all of the avenues in life that I've gone down are playing a heavy role in my decision making here. So I don't think that, if you're, it's that social media argument, right? If you're in your own bubble, you don't really see out of it too much. And so I'm always careful to keep at least my head and my eyes outside of this bubble. So I'm not just wrapped up in moon boy math. And I do actually have some fundamental research and analysis behind my thought process, right? And I am, and I'm not going to shy away from saying it. When it comes to PulseX, when it comes to PulseChain, when it comes to Hex, I am very, very bullish about this ecosystem because I've seen this play out in so many different avenues to date that it's going to be very difficult for me not to be bullish, right? And I know that sounds a pretty general statement to make about this, but first and foremost, and I guess I should go through some of the reasons why it stands out to me, right? We saw Hex, and I was aware of Hex while it was around, when it kicked off, just after it kicked off. Really, I didn't get heavily involved at all. I saw a lot of people that did. So I'm not going to lie and say that a large part of my draw into this ecosystem really didn't come from firsthand seeing people change their financial situation. I think we had talked about this in our previous video as well, where I think when you have experience firsthand, you see a big transference of wealth take place before your eyes. And I'm talking, my network is we have a lot of very successful people, far more successful than me, all usually around a certain age, right? They're all kind of, a little older than us. And they've been working their entire life to put them in the position that they're in. And I saw over the course of about 2-3 years, people in my circle who, again, were not that successful really, just happened to be at the cutting edge, or a bit more of a gung-ho mentality about crypto and investment. And they have become the people with the highest net worths, the more disposable income, and quite significantly so. So first and foremost, I would be lying if I said that that wasn't an initial draw for me.
Sure.
Then
How could it not
obviously,
be?
oh, of course, yeah. And look, it's not the only one. I mean, I'll say that I've been made aware of so many other projects. We've talked about some of my history too with crypto mining, and I'm not new to crypto.
Yeah.
I was, one of the quote unquote OGs into Ethereum. I sold way too early, and I didn't realize any of, like most of us did. But I'm not new to crypto. It's not a new space for me. Why am I starting a channel now based around a ecosystem that hasn't, or not really based around, but right now the focus is on an ecosystem that hasn't yet come to fruition, and it's due to excitement levels. It's due to taking an analyzed approach to what I have seen working in the past, and large parts of my bullishness come down to what I foresee as a massive network effect. And so,
Okay.
I've through my tenure in the VC space, I have seen just how much impact a community and a network can have. And sometimes when investing into new brands, new startups, new technologies, you don't necessarily have all the data points that you want to pull from. And I think that the best you can do is, certainly look at what that potential brand footprint looks like, what the leadership looks like, what the team looks like, what the general ethos and the available market down the road can look like. And for me, there are a lot of different nuances to really kind of digging in and assessing, if it fits this criteria. And for me, it does. It's there's too much writing on the wall right now, and it's not just due to the technology or the community. It's due to timing as well. I've been a huge proponent of DeFi since it came out. We know it was a big buzzword during the last cycle. It was a new
Right.
way of looking at finance, and it provided a lot of security, a lot of autonomy for retail investors too to come in and start working off a centralized format, which was fantastic. But whereas sometimes you have the risk of seeing kind of what's hot at the moment during a bull cycle, and then the next bull cycle, there's a new shiny toy, and everyone kind of gravitates towards that. I don't think this is going to be the case this time. And this is even pre, interest from BlackRock. This is pre kind of DeFi having the potential to take on a whole different dynamic. I think that the narrative in general, especially as we've been seeing and this, the centralized exchange risks and that kind of negative sentiment has been around for a while. We're just seeing a lot
Sure.
of it come to fruition right now with Sam Bankman and all the sanctions that are coming into Kraken and Gemini, all that kind of stuff. We're just seeing that coming now, but I've been expecting that for a while, and that's played a huge role into my positive outlook on DeFi. I think that just due to the nature of how it's grown, it's not as controllable. It's not as, or in a good way, it's not so sanctionable, let's say. And so I could see that the narrative was certainly going to be around privacy. It was going to be around transparency and autonomy going forward. And that in itself, coupled with the fact that we have a new ecosystem that's going to be faster and cheaper, which two reasons in themselves are going to be, huge selling points going forward.
Let me pause you on that. So, faster and cheaper than ETH, but not
Right.
faster and cheaper than just about anything else being built right now. So,
True.
help me better understand why that's important. Because I mean, you look at anything, you look at Polygon, you look virtually anything that's being built right now is faster and cheaper. Um, so, does that narrative hold up,
I think
and why?
I think it does because there is a lot of interaction with Ethereum, right? There's so many products and protocols that are really it's a go-to for any new, like, look at what's happening now in the DeFi space with BlackRock. Where did they go? They went to Uniswap, which is on Ethereum.
Right.
I think that a lot of sometimes taking a step back and simplifying this is often just as useful as anything else. It may not kind of bare bones be as fast or cheap as some other protocols, but if they're not as well known as the system state copy that we're having, with Ethereum, then that in itself is going to be, an opportunity cost if you're not kind of getting involved in it, right? So, there are, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I've had an interest in some of these other layer ones, layer twos as well. I mean, but most of the layer twos that I've had an interest in have been on Ethereum. And I think it's for good reason. I think we have a tenure in the space with Ethereum. Ethereum has a lot of gravitas, and we're able to piggyback a lot of that gravitas and kind of ride the coattails going into something that is very transferable to blockchain, to PulseChain. And so I mean, that's a huge reason. I think
Yeah.
that, again, because one of my main drivers here was the positive narrative around DeFi going into this next bull cycle. Most of that DeFi transaction wise is taking place on Uniswap. It's taking place on Ethereum. And so I don't want to be all in, so to speak, on something that is still considered an early adoption play rather than capitalizing on an everyone play. And I think that while a lot of these layer ones, these newer layer ones, certainly have good facilitators, they're good platforms to use. I do think that a lot of new money coming into the market, a lot of institutional money, is going to use Ethereum as a first choice. And I think that again, it's there's a lot of parallels between a pulse chain and Ethereum right now. And so when that comes out, I just think it's an easier transition, as many of the projects and many of the protocols, they're all going to be copied anyway. And so it's almost streamlining that whole process. And that's not something that's happening in these other layer ones, if that makes sense.
It
So while
doesn't.
there's no issues with other layer ones, or I think that due to a lot of the market movement we're going to see, the, all money and capital and revenue and interest is going to matriculate through the rest of crypto anyway. I think that as people start to get more into this space, and as we start seeing a lot of these fund managers especially coming in with boatloads of opportunity and avenues,
Mhm.
well, everyone's going to be looking for an edge, and that may be where we start to see a lot of interest in other layer ones that they foresee having a lot more runway, certainly in terms of price appreciation, than in Ethereum. But I also think that that is going to be PulseChain's role. I think that a lot of people coming in are going to see a brand new ecosystem, vertically integrated, which is important too. There's a lot more control and autonomy within a system when it's vertically integrated. And I think that we keep using the word ecosystem. That's
Mhm.
going to be a crazy buzzword for new folks coming in from traditional finance. It is to me, because all of the effort you're putting in there, you have an ecosystem to play with, and it's and we start looking at Hex as a store of value, for instance, within that ecosystem.
Sure.
I think that is actually going to play a huge role as well. Why would you take it off chain? Why would you take it out of the ecosystem if you can streamline a roll in to your next project or your next token? And so all of these elements really play into me to again, the writing seems to be on the wall from a timing perspective. If we can start garnering now, prior to a pulse chain launch, a lot of this initial interest into Ethereum, it just makes sense that they are provided with a cheaper alternative, or a faster or a more controlled alternative, while not departing too far from the chain that they already had the initial interest in.
That's a good point. And Hexagon also brings up here, L2s are going to gravitate towards pulse chain, which honestly, I don't know why I didn't think about that, but it seems very obvious. If L2s are being built around um, making Ethereum more efficient, then why wouldn't they do the same thing for pulse chain? So that's a really good thought process that we should probably dig into at some point.
Yeah.
Academaciated. Every time I try to say this, I screw it up. Good morning is what I'm trying to say here. Now, the thing you said there that I want to get more info on is, let me recap there. You see institutional money coming into Ethereum for several reasons. First of all, it's the longest established. It has the biggest ecosystem. It's proven to be safe.
It's the easiest sell for a manager too.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
they
Perfect.
don't sign off on everything, a lot of the time. So it's far easier to get a chain that has that tenure in the space, a certain amount of gravitas behind it, to gain that trust factor, to get it signed off and to get things moving.
It's the easiest sell. I like that because it's true. We don't have to prove it. It's not new technology,
No.
which is maybe it's its advantage and maybe its disadvantage as well, in the sense of cost effectiveness. But at the same time, people with the type of money that these institutions have, they don't care about a $500 swap fee or anything like that.
Well, yeah.
And it just goes to their write-off. But so the question I have then is, so you said that the transition to Pulse Chain will almost be a no-brainer, for lack of better words. The one thing I want to ask, however, is that with Pulse Chain, how are these institutional investors going to view two things that I think are important? A, the how the money was raised. The money was raised very differently, and there is a lot of talk about was that an illegal sale of a security. And I'm just going to technical timeout here. I get that everybody that's listening to this thinks that that's crap and that's FUD and everything like that, but our opinion does not matter. What matters is the opinion of the people that are looking at the ecosystem and wanting to invest in it. So, how do you think, coming from that background, how do you think these institutional investors will look at how the money was raised with the sacrifice versus a actual sale of a security fundraising round? And is there a risk in that to them? Do they would they possibly see that as a risk profile that might scare them away?
Um, I mean, possibly, but I don't really think so because I mean, you're talking about the pulse chain sacrifice, correct?
Yes, PulseChain. I'm sorry
Yeah.
if I didn't make that clear.
No, no, and that's fine. I don't think so. I think that once the proof is there that this thing is actually up and running and doing what it says on the tin, it's almost counterbalanced by a very visual founder. And I think that that's important too. It always is in the VC space. It always is in any kind of investment vehicle where the leadership team and the founder have to be gaining that trust firsthand. And I think that Richard Hart definitely is someone who does that. Now, again, we can probably have the argument that a lot of his twerking kind of lifestyle there isn't exactly institutional money, appealing there, right? So, again, it's all checks and balances in place, really, in terms of kind of how they're going to weigh things up. But I don't necessarily think it's going to scare anyone away. I mean, the sacrifice phase was really an ingenious move. If you're a fund manager, you're going to respect that more than anything.
Oh,
Now,
so that's good to hear. Okay, great.
yeah, I think so. And again, I can't really speak for any and all out there, but it certainly hasn't deterred lots of the folks that I've been speaking to. Albeit now, a lot of the conversations that I've had recently have been more based around Ethereum and Uniswap, which I think will be, some real good opportunities for investment going forward. But the folks that I have spoken about firsthand, and these are really the only ones that I'm able to speak for, right? They haven't been put off by PulseChain. They've been made aware of it, probably by
Okay.
me. I think that I've been the one that's brought them into that because we do still have a very small amount of folks who are knowledgeable about PulseChain, despite the fact that we have a rather big community for a new chain and a brand new project or projects. In the grand scheme of things, it isn't really well known yet, I don't think. And so I think that, I mean, there's no real way of answering this yet. I think it's yet to be seen. But I don't think when something's up and running, and I'm talking even a couple months, a year after, as we start getting into bull market proper, I think that's going to be almost an irrelevant time, a moment in time at that point. I don't think that, we know the world of finance is fast moving. We know that things tend to evolve. And I think that you're only as good as the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months track record. And so I think that a
Yeah.
lot of these, as long as we're still operating, and there's, if there's one thing about Richard Hart, he will not launch until he thinks something is perfect, right?
Yes.
And so I think that we have a lot of that going for us as well. So I definitely understand the concern. And, it is a concern, maybe. But from my experience, I'm not sure that's necessarily something to worry about because I think that it's more going to the decision making is more going to operate about just how it's functioning, what problems are occurring, how cheap it is, and how fast it is. Right? I think
Right.
that's going to play more of the algorithm there.
And at the end of the day, as much as that stuff might seem like it's important, these institutes are out there to make money, and they're going to go where they think they can make money.
That's it. That's it. And I think that while there's two sides of this too, because while we talked about this bringing stability to a lot of these chains, and I think if we can get even a fraction of what will be going on Ethereum over to Pulse Chain, well, that will make for some significant price movement for us, right? I mean, that's more what we're concerned about initially. Yes, we
Sure.
want to see the technology work. We want to see DeFi open up its gates and all of these wonderful things to happen. But it's going to take significantly more economic energy on Ethereum to move the needle anywhere close to what we're going to see on Pulse Chain with far less economic energy. So we don't even need to take the majority there. I think we're naturally going to attract a lot of attention from probably a minority to begin with, but that minority is enough to get extremely bullish on our side, because that is still massive amounts of interest and capital coming into this ecosystem. I don't think people are understanding this. It's very easy to say, for folks in the comments and things to say, oh, this is crazy bullish. Yeah, there's reason to be bullish on this front, because we're talking about the floodgates opening for some mass capital. We're not talking about retail investment. We're not talking about the normal network effect of retail investors that we were getting excited about before, that I was getting excited about before. We're talking about huge. It's going to take a handful of fund managers to get involved into PulseChain for things to go crazy. And I really do think, I mean, I said this before in a video as well, and I get it. I'm putting myself out there a little bit in terms of kind of my predictions here. But if you get off the ride too early, because we know what happens, some of these things tend to get delayed a little bit. People start to think, is it going to happen? And then all of a sudden, the energy pours in. These things will take a little bit of time to come to fruition. Not huge amount of time. I'm talking, during this next bull cycle for sure. And so getting off the ride too early is going to make a huge difference. And people will. The majority of people will. They'll see 100x, they'll see a 200x, they'll see a 1000x, and they will get out of Dodge. And that's fine.
I mean, can we fault somebody for getting out of Dodge at 1000x? I mean, that's not like, maybe we can fault somebody to 10 or a 50x, but come on, 1000x. I'm gonna be honest, I'm selling some at 1000x.
For the majority of people, that's going to be fantastic, and I completely understand that too. But I think that the people have compared PulseChain to Ethereum, and obviously anything can happen, right? We're not Nostradamuses, we're not financial advisors. We can only kind of play it as we see it. And there's been a lot of comparison to Ethereum in terms of just the traction that had. And there's a lot of variables at play there that perhaps aren't necessarily repeatable by other layer ones. The fact that it was one of the first ones around, right? The first. Right. So I mean, timing is everything. But I think that, launching in the way that PulseChain is launching, with so much interest, projects who are going to be interacting with the chain right out of the gates. And then we have this new insurgence of never before seen interest from traditional finance. We have a good ways ahead of us. We have a very bullish time ahead. I'm not going to say that we're going to do 16,000x in the first, 4 years, but I think that if anything, we should be feeling a lot more confident in some of our more bullish predictions. And I truly believe that. I think that, this is to me right now, and I'm sure this will happen, next cycle too. We'll see some fantastic opportunities, but this seems like a once in a generation. It's going to take a lot to derail kind of the train that everything's on right now. And people are often wondering, are we still early into crypto? Which of course we are right now, but
yeah, we are.
This is one of the indicators with all of this interest coming from, from traditional finance. This is kind of coming to the end of Cowboyville. We may not have much runway ahead of us of massive gains, because as soon as we see some deep interest and interaction from traditional finance, that's when things start to get a little bit more controlled, right? They have to. But for anyone interested in crypto now, who's even, small amounts of money, dollar cost averaging in, this is the time to make huge gains, because I'm telling you, the people late to the game are not going to have that opportunity once those sanctions and those controls come into play. And they've already started coming into play. Yeah. If there's anything set up to expedite that process, it's the huge amounts of interest right now that we're seeing from money managers, especially.
So do you think this could be the bull run of all bull runs?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, these things tend to get, we saw what happened with the housing crisis, right? Some people were calling it super early on. It took a while to come to fruition. And then, it was almost too late then. We could always see that happening. Look what's happened with PulseChain launch, right? We all thought it was coming out last year. It didn't. And so it pushed. So I'm not going to say that this is going to be the bull market of all bull markets, and there's not going to be any more bull markets that compare. But I think it's going to be a fantastic one. Yeah. And I think that, we do have the real risk, like I've been saying with Hex, I think we have the real risk of price running away from us if we're not acting quickly, or if we're not looking to be those early adopters that can really. And again, it's all mindset too, because we all know that with tokens, especially newer projects, we're going to see a lot of volatility. So you've got to put money in, you've got to put capital in, you've got to take your positions with a mindset that you're not going to sell for a couple of years, right? I mean, I'm not
That
saying you don't pull out of any, because, if we start seeing 1,000x in record timing, then yeah, take some profit, because, you're a drop in the ocean compared to some of the money that's hopefully coming in, right? But if you have a
yeah.
long enough mindset, the ups and downs, the volatility isn't really going to be that important to you going forward, because a lot of this money coming in is going to make us all look like, tiny minnows. And that's fantastic. But it also means that that kind of law of depreciation, that law of depreciating assets or depreciating value, is going to come into play and be expedited all the more.
Yes, it is. Hexagon brings up a good point, which is even if this next bull run is the granddaddy of all, the future ones are still going to be better than anything you're going to get on Wall Street.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Take it from someone who was working on the stock exchange for a long, long time. I was on the trading floor, and trust me, this is never before seen. There's a reason a lot of traditional brokers, a lot of traditional traders are excited about crypto and have been for a while.
sure. It's just a matter of getting the access to it. So, two more questions on kind of the prove me wrong type of mentality, and then we'll just go full bullish, because that'll
Yeah.
be fun. Yeah, that'll be the reward for the people that stuck it out. You mentioned two things there that I kind of want to touch base on. So number one, you didn't mention this. I'm just blaming you. So, but the thought process went through my mind is one thing that I don't want to say I have concerns around, but that I could see that could potentially be an issue with institutional investors. What are your thoughts on how institutional investors are going to view the centralized ownership of PulseChain? I mean, the OA is going to own 90%. To anybody that does risk management analysis, they could look at that and say, this is a huge risk. I mean, at any given point, this unknown entity could dump everything. Obviously, before everybody yells at me, we know that the OA is a benevolent whale at this point. And the track record of that suggests that it's going to continue to go on. But from somebody that's coming in looking for a place to put their money, how are they going to do risk analysis against a project, a coin that has 90% ownership held in, a wallet of unknown origin?
The unfortunate answer is they absolutely will have those risk analysts in place, and that is going to be a big red flag. It has to be. But again, it depends on the lens that a lot of these folks are looking through. Lots of them are not going to be looking through the next 20 years, the next 50 years. Now, we know that, when it comes to the largest ETF in the world being tokenized, like BlackRock did, well, that's probably better served on Ethereum right now, purely because we don't have that issue. And that's one of the risk analysis points that will come up. I think we'll go, I think it will be somewhat of a red flag, at least initially. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Obviously, it's far easier as a trust factor for retail investors, because we are somewhat short-lived in terms of what our investment outlook is,
Right.
compared to an institution which has, especially if they're putting, some of these real-world assets that are, much longer tailed into the market. They don't have the same time horizons that we have. They have to stay in for a little bit longer in order to make it worth it for them to even establish themselves on a chain. But that's not everyone. I think we're talking about a huge amount of interest from a huge amount of asset managers, and those asset managers can be anything. They can be a lot smaller in nature too. It's not just the big banks that have the opportunity here. It's the small real estate projects. It's the the trading of commodities, which can be done in kind of one-time trades. So there's going to be a middle ground of people that do weigh that up and deem it not to be a risk, certainly for their own their own methods of investment or their own methods of managing their assets. And I think that we can only wait and see in terms of how that plays out, because none of us really know what's going to happen with that OA. It would make sense, and I can't imagine if Richard's a smart guy, and
Yeah.
he's going to see the writing on the wall too. So I'm sure that he's going to pull some PR magic, and he's going to do something that plays into this crowd, right? Maybe it's I don't know what it is. We've talked about the various ways that people seem to be scared that Richard's going to pull it all out and spend it. There's so many ways around that. Life insurance policies. There's a bunch of different avenues that he can take to leverage the money that he has without ever selling it.
Yeah.
These asset managers are aware of that too. So perhaps when we start seeing some of these institutions like a BlackRock, for instance, potentially come into market, you don't know what conversations are taken behind the scenes there in terms of, hey, we're interested. What do we have to lose here? And that's when those maybe a little bit more transparency from the OA is warranted. But you bring up a very good point, and I think that there is a risk there, certainly initially. But I just think there is such a plethora of different types of investment opportunities or assets that can be tokenized and brought in, and not just the tokenized stuff. I mean, we have all these different projects and things that we'll be launching anyway outside of traditional finance. But even in traditional finance, the thing right now that I'm super bullish about, as we say in the UK, right, there are different horses for different courses, and I think that this has potential to play even with that kind of red flag of the OA. This can play perfectly still into a lot of their investment strategies.
Sure.
But again, there's no way of knowing right now until that some of this starts playing out. And again, I have faith in Richard being able to position things as they need to be positioned.
Well, you bring up a good point that I appreciate you addressing, that from a risk analysis standpoint, it is kind of a red flag. But another thing to consider, which I was just thinking about while you were talking there, is that that red flag really only exists if they want to invest in PulseChain. That red flag does not exist if they want to interact on PulseChain.
Oh, absolutely not.
You can still put all of your assets on the blockchain and do all of your transactions without buying Pulse as an investment. Obviously, you need to have a little for gas, but that doesn't negate the utilization of the blockchain. And utilization is all that really matters to you and I, especially if there's big volume people using it, because that's going to burn and add value to the chain.
And this is also why PulseX is such a fantastic investment too. And just to give you a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain to my conversations.
Okay. You got ahead of me. So we addressed the, I guess I'll say, my own internal FUD, but the objective questions that I wanted to get out today. So, and I just saw like the big smile come across your face. So it's like, okay, so now we're going to go.
I'm going to be touching on in future videos too.
Yeah.
So make sure anyone here is subscribing. I do have some insider knowledge, I guess, which isn't actually insider knowledge for legal purposes, but a glimpse behind the curtain in terms of some plans that I've been made aware of anyway.
Well, I am happy that you're about to share that on my channel, selfishly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the biggest takeaway is that based on what's happening with institutional investors, looking at Ethereum, PulseChain being an easy go-to from the fact that it's a direct fork of Ethereum. It's easier to transact on. It seems like a no-brainer to us for institutes to migrate over there. They don't have to buy PulseChain to utilize the network to take advantage of everything that it has to offer. The only thing that we discussed that, is kind of like, we'll see, is the OA, but that only pertains to if these institutes want to invest in PulseChain, not necessarily use it. So I appreciate you taking time to help me understand that better. So now let's get into the PulseChain. Is it worth the hype? I think you've helped me better understand, and hopefully those that are listening, that a lot of the concerns maybe aren't very warranted out there.
They're outweighed.
Outweighed. Thank you. That's a really good way to put it. So let's get into the why PulseChain absolutely is worth the hype. And I think the number one answer is about to come out of your mouth is because that's where PulseX is going to live. So let's get into kind of change course in the conversation. Why are you super excited about PulseX?
So a lot of this, I mean, I was excited about PulseX, and I'm talking aside from the buy and burn, aside from the glorious tokenomics that we've seen. I mean, look, it doesn't take an overly savvy crypto guru to see just what benefits there are in this as a decentralized exchange. It's head and shoulders above any other decentralized exchange out there from a tokenomic perspective. This buy and burn itself is only going to get more powerful as time goes forward. And then if we have a lot of this additional interest and economic energy coming in to DeFi, that pushes things parabolically. And so, and I'm going to preface what I'm about to say in that I've only spoken to about 6 or 7 contacts of mine, albeit, some of them are fund managers, some of them are actually on the trading floor. And just to assess their excitement levels more than anything, the conversations that I've opened are more about, hey, what's going on, right? What is your opinion? And the feedback has been surprise, or not really surprising, but you shouldn't be surprised by people who are on the ground floor there, who actually can see the writing on the wall and using a bit of foresight. A lot of the excitement levels from some of these fund managers, both personally and professionally, isn't necessarily just about bringing their own tokenized vehicles to the marketplace. It's actually in investment in these protocols, in things like node purchasing and setting up new vehicles and avenues in owning and operating nodes, and just what other kind of ways that they're able to capitalize on that. Because in their mind, they're seeing the writing on the wall. Right now, a Uniswap's going to go crazy. A Ethereum is going to go crazy. They're going to see a lot of price appreciation. So a lot of them are taking positions now, or plan to, buying up nodes, as many as possible, and having that be the kind of the pickaxe to the gold rush, right? And just in the preliminary conversations that I've had with them about PulseChain, I'd say that probably 10% of them were aware of PulseChain, the rest not so much. And I wanted to get a kind of a pulse on, no pun intended, a pulse on on what their interest levels were. And this is obviously, pre that risk analysis we talked about, but I don't imagine that playing a huge role, especially when it comes to node purchases, because again, there's a disconnect between all things OA and owning nodes and owning the tokens and whatnot. I mean, it's decentralized for a reason, and there is mass excitement there in terms of when this thing launches. And it's hard because, again, I'm trying to contain my own bullishness, just because I know there are folks out there who this is the only opinion they will listen to. And if anything happens, I'm going to have people kind of screaming at me. But
at the risk.
this is the kind of indicator that, if I'm making, 7 people aware of PulseChain, or 7 people that I know in those circles, there are more and more people, around the globe who are taking a massive interest. And so if this thing launches and we see a huge interest from node purchases, that in itself is going to really pump PulseChain and PulseX. That's going to inject some instant, like, again, we're talking about price running away from us. And I'm not saying this is definitely going to play out. In an ideal world, we'll see a slower incremental kind of rise up and to the right, because that's going to provide much more price stability along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But again, and I'm not just talking about PulseChain and PulseX. I think that Uniswap and Ethereum are also going to see that, albeit it's going to take more to move the needle.
Sure.
But we have a real opportunity for anyone who's either involved in these projects or planning to right out of the gates. This is why, I'm hearing a lot of people saying that, especially with PulseX, wait for it to come out, let it drop, or PulseChain, wait for it to come out, let it drop a little bit. The power of DCAing into this cannot be understated. I think that, or overstated rather. I think that, again, in terms of risks of price running away, these are some of the variables that we need to think about. And this is reason enough for me that getting in earlier, and I'm not saying jump in with all your bags, right? In an ideal world, you do, and then you work a part-time job to continue doing so. I understand not everyone's going to be doing that. But just the interest from a lot of the people that I know, and I'm talking, without dropping names, that most of you probably wouldn't know them anyway, but they're working at some of the biggest institutes in the world, old contacts of mine at Goldman Sachs, and folks who, and I haven't, and this isn't even like a lot of the VC conversations that can potentially take place as well. I haven't really had many of those right now. It's been a couple of days, right? But but I think that I think that this excitement around just exploring the avenues of capitalizing on price appreciation of these chains and these decentralized exchanges is a much more direct impact on price. People taking up positions early and consistently just based on how they see price evolving. It's not even just the economic energy coming from the tokenization. It's direct investment and node management within these chains, within these kind of ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge. That's monumental again. And there's a lot of variables to consider here, but I'm very thankful that I'm so close to the traditional finance world right now, because we talked about, a lot of people kind of going full time into crypto. And this is why I can't afford to do that, because I don't want to miss the other side of that conversation. I want to be able to be a bit of a fly on the wall across the table there, so that we can also look through the lens of what, using a bit of foresight, and again, kind of seeing the blueprint in front of us. It's hard not to be bullish. It's very difficult not to be bullish right now.
Well, you're in a unique position. I mean, feet on the ground inside that institutional investor space does give you a pulse on both things, pun intended. Um, both what is that money doing, and then of course you're doing the YouTube channel, and when you do this, as you have learned already, you kind of give yourself a backstage pass to interview some of the people that have been around the longest and understand it
For
the
sure.
best, which is
Yep.
really the only reason why I did a YouTube channel, so I get to talk to people like you. Um,
Yeah.
which is amazing. So help me better understand, and maybe for our audience too, which by the way, we have eclipsed 100 people this morning. So awesome.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's an
Fantastic.
indicator of bullishness to me. Um, you said something there that I want to learn more about, or perhaps understand more about, because you said the best way to put it, the institutional money will be taking other avenues, not just necessarily buying the cryptocurrencies themselves, but buying nodes. And that's almost an indirect way to invest in any given project without having the exposure to
Yep.
the OA, as we discussed, if that's is a concern. So somebody could buy up the nodes to earn the yield on it, and I guess keep that a little bit cleaner. Help me understand that better. I mean, you're hearing people talking about that. Is that a move that big companies are taking to get their hands in crypto without actually getting their hands on crypto?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just big institutions; it's small institutions too. Because what we'll see again, we're going to see traction in PulseChain, of course, because it's brand new. Um, and it's any and all kind of layer ones and dexes and all of that. We're going to see a lot of movement in all of these, I imagine, because if there's one thing fund managers are, it's creative. And I think that,
Oh, that's
finding
good.
new, yeah, they will find new avenues. And I've lived this, it's great because finding new avenues of income or revenue, and then building that out into a realm and then position yourself as first in that realm is something these large institutions will do. The smaller institutions and the less dynamic folks will, of course, wait for the path to be smoothed over before they jump in there. But yeah, I think that this node isn't just it's another. There's so many different avenues this can take, and it's being discussed right now. It has been discussed in the conversations that I've had, where it's essentially setting up funds around node management and operation as well, right? So
Mhm.
it's not just the investment and the buying of them and sit back and wait. It's the expansion of those funds. So it's an evergreen process, and I'm sure that there'll be other
I like the way you
topics
put
of
that.
interest that come up. Yeah, it really is. Like there's no real end to this. It's not like PulseChain can launch. Some of the early folks will get in, buy a couple nodes, and then sit on them, because that's not how the business model works. They're always looking for new investment opportunities, and albeit a year from now, 10 years from now, that same avenue, that same fund or whatever the vehicle is that they're trying to sell to investors may have diminishing returns compared to what we've seen. That's par for the course. Being early pays, but people are
Yeah.
still going to be interested in 30% a year, 20% a year, 10% a year, 5% a year. We've seen it right
Right.
in other traditional finance, and this plays into the whole reason of why I think that. And I know a lot of people have said this, but crypto really in itself having those diminishing returns, and why it's important now to make sure we're paying attention and taking up positions where we believe the opportunity is, because we may not see such magnificent hopeful returns going forward as a lot of these vehicles. And this is just one example. There are so many different avenues. This is just literally in the days and weeks since interest was very well known.
Mhm.
Let's be clear too, for anyone watching this who's a little bit more familiar with some of the tokenization side of things. We had this with tokenized securities in the past. It isn't necessarily something brand new, but what is brand new is the interest level,
Yeah.
because now crypto's in a space to handle it. Now we have blockchains that have the experience, and even just putting numbers to this, right? Like BlackRock itself, again, I can't state. I love BlackRock. I
It's
always
apparent.
Yeah, yeah, I do, and a lot of people seem to, compare them to the Illuminati or the shadowy undersurface of finance. I mean, that's what fringe finance is, right?
Right,
It's finding
exactly.
creative ways to leverage. There's a reason they're the biggest manager in the world, and people trust them with their money who have money. But they're predicting like $10 billion coming into this niche in this calendar year, and then by the end of the decade, 16 trillion. Do you know how much that is? That is crazy. And
That's
there's a
like 1/10 of the United States debt.
it's huge. And they already have trillions in assets under
Yeah.
management, of course, but this is a huge addressable market that they're talking about, bringing huge benefits to them. And with a crypto landscape that has the capacity to facilitate this. And so this is why I am bullish. I know I kind of reverted back to my previous point there, but
Yeah, well,
um,
it's fine. One thing that I just thought about while you were talking about this, and it kind of makes a lot of sense the more I let my brain noodle on it. But the whole node and the validator idea of what some of these institutes may or may not want to do, and it's something I guess anybody should consider, is the big difference between the yield paid on these, we'll just say nodes, or any, I guess, any yield bearing crypto account versus your traditional 3% at your bank account is
no
it
brainer.
pays it pays in an appreciating asset,
It does.
not a depreciating asset. So that alone, especially if you're getting in today, like the next now until the Bitcoin halving is the golden hour. Well, I should say 2 months ago was the golden hour when everything bottomed out, but the window isn't gone. And if anybody is getting in now between now and the Bitcoin halving, and you're getting into a yield generating asset, it's paying in an appreciating asset. The yield is in something that's going to actually grow in valleys. So you could earn 10% yield, but that vehicle, whatever it is, Pulse, Hex, whatever it is, if that also appreciates by 10x, then your yield is through the roof.
For
That's
sure.
mind blowing, and they have to be thinking about that. Have to
Oh,
be.
absolutely. Well,
And
that's the other side of the equation for any fund managers, right?
yeah,
They may even just keep that to themselves. There's so many ways of playing this out. A lot
because
of
they
them will
can.
probably see what the market does, because if the widespread solution is to just take the yield, and yet the entity gets the benefit, from the rise in price, they're of course looking at that, which of course aligns their interest then with price appreciation in different avenues. And so, do you think that those entities are not going to put a lot of emphasis into other ways of pumping price? Of course they are.
Yeah,
We may
absolutely.
then also face the same challenges of, manipulation and all of that stuff. But right now we're so early, I don't care.
I
I
mean, if
really
it
don't
if
care.
it, if it manipulates to the upper right, I'm okay with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we've got a super chat here. Once again, always very, very grateful for those of you that are willing to support the channel. CN, thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing that. One thing I want to point out here, and this is a great statement, because it says the biggest advantage of PulseChain is the firepower available to Richard Hart to muscle into the top league. And I not only do I agree with this, but I remember a conversation that a streamer had, and this was, gosh, almost 2 years ago at this point, well, a year and a half ago, when they did the Hex 2-year party in I think it was London. It doesn't really matter where the party was, but this particular individual was, for lack of better terms, butthurt, because they were an OG to Hex. They had done incredibly well. They were wealthy. And apparently, Richard Hart had a private dinner at this 2-year anniversary party. And this person was expecting to have a seat at the table, and he didn't. And what he said is that he was really surprised by that, because he thought he was a big deal. Being an OG and having made probably tens of millions. He said, but the people that showed up for this private dinner, they all flew in on private jets. They all took, escorted, maybe not escorted, but limos and whatever have you from the airport. They had their dinner and then they left. So it was kind of like the underground wealthy people that Richard Hart knew that he had this private dinner with.
Yeah.
And then they went on their way. They're not, these people aren't necessarily they're not on YouTube. They're not on Twitter. They don't give a rip. They have
Would you
real
be?
money. Yeah,
Right?
exactly. They've got real money. And so, what CN says here about the biggest advantage of PulseChain is the firepower available to Richard Hart. We've seen that. We know that. And I also, I've had the pleasure of becoming friends with a guy named Crypto Profeta, and I've been chatting with him just about every day. And he is in a little private group that Richard Hart is also in. And he said, "Man, I can't tell you really the details, but the names that are in this group would blow your mind." He's like, "These are the kingpins of crypto that are in there." So Richard Hart has a pulse on the people that have the
Drink every
capital.
time we say that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's become the new joke. But so CN, A, thank you for your very generous super chat, and B, spot on, spot on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was a big. That's always an eye opener for people. I've said it before. Realizing how much money there is in the world, like we're not talking about the folks who have made 10 to 20 million in the crypto market. They've been able to make it from nothing, and it's fantastic and it's life changing. But again, I've personally seen average Joes making hundreds of millions of dollars. These are the folks riding around in helicopters,
Yeah,
like for a day for a day out to go to the store. It's ridiculous, and
it's awesome. I mean, I think it's
it
cool.
is.
Congratulations, those people. Want to give you a quick chance here, Ben, to plug yourself before I forget, because that is one of my strengths, is forgetting everything. Fallen Wrath says, "Do you have a YouTube channel?" Real quick, plug yourself, because you bring a lot of value. You have a very unique perspective, and I think it's important for anybody that's interested in the Pulse Chain space, PulseX, whatever have you, to follow Ben. So plug yourself, please.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah, anyone who does want to subscribe, hopefully many of you. Ben Cage, it's a very easy YouTube name, and Kayge. Yeah, go ahead. I'm my channel. I'm looking to. It's fairly new, as we touched on earlier. I mean, it's growing pretty quickly. I'm happy to say, and I think that's really due to a bit of a unique lens that I'm looking at the crypto landscape. Of course, there are certain selling points and value propositions that are pretty universal. But I think that, as we may have touched on in today's call, a lot of the things going forward in my channel are perhaps going to be areas that other channels either don't really have the experience or the capacity to talk about, or it's just an area that I have a bigger interest in. And I think that, touching on something like this whole kind of DeFi insurgence going forward is definitely going to be one of them. Looking at new projects going forward too. And I know that may be a dirty word for some of us because we're very gung ho about the Richard Hart ecosystem, but it is very important going forward to be flexible in your mindset. There are going to be opportunities and fantastic opportunities in the Richard Hart ecosystem. There are, again, going to be new platforms, new projects, new things that we want to be looking at as well. And so I'm going to be touching on a lot of this stuff going forward as well. So yeah, I hope that kind of sets a tone for kind of the direction of my channel. But follow me on Twitter too. It's very much the same, at Ben Cage. Super easy. But I'd be more than happy to have anyone and everyone join my fast growing community.
That's right. Ben Cage is it's really impressive what you've done, honestly. And
It's going faster than I thought, to be honest with you, and it's enjoyable too. Seeing the comments and the questions, it's super motivating. And for me, like I say, I'm not full time crypto. I don't want to be. I mean,
no.
I'll take a big vested interest myself, and any education and any kind of community that I can build in this realm is great. And who knows kind of what direction that takes in the future. But it's great coming in and having enjoyable conversations like this, because like, a lot of things have come to mind now that, it's hard to ideate on your own, and finding
Yeah,
other people, who are excited about a lot of similar things in this space it often makes for some really great conversations. So it's been fantastic.
it is. It has been a lot of fun. So I mean, I applaud you on your growth. You said something that I kind of chuckled at inside. You're like, "Oh, it's been a lot of fun. All these conversations have been great." You're just about to the point where you're going to start getting a lot of haters.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I've got them here in the chat, people telling me I'm stupid and all this type of stuff, which isn't too far fetched. But these comments right here, Ben, are why I keep doing what I'm doing. And Carl Greenwood, thank you for saying this. This is the type of stuff that keeps the fire under my butt to keep going. Crypto kindness, it's entirely down to you. I am here waiting for Pulse Chain. Your channel onboarded me, so very big thank you. Like, this is fantastic. And I believe 100% that was a good decision.
Yeah, no, and you are one of the, like I say, I said it before, but I followed you from your very first video. I think you had a great approach there. I love the open mind that you have, and just a good vibe. I think it's tough. I
I
mean,
try.
it's
Thank
easy
you.
in the crypto space. I mean, as soon as people start getting a following, they start thinking they know everything, and then you see that aura change a little bit, right?
Yeah.
We're all constantly learning. As much as I'm bringing some experience to the table from my perspective, I'm still got a lot to learn. So I've got to be open minded as well, just like anyone else. And so I love that about your channel too. I think I get the sense that you're continuously wanting to learn, and everyone you bring on, you're asking really smart questions, and I think a very natural interviewer. So
Well, thank you.
thank you for that. You've motivated me too.
Yeah, my wife actually said the other day, she's like, "Well, you've been doing this for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years now. Like, what have you learned?" And my answer was, "I've learned that I don't know anything."
You're
It's like
right.
the more I know, the more I realize, like, especially when you talk to someone that's really into the weeds. And I mentioned his name earlier, Profeta. And I mean, this guy is texting me stuff on a daily basis. I'm just like, oh my God, I didn't even, there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that whole piece of the pie is way bigger than the piece of the pie that I do know. And there
Share some of
is,
that with me. I'm open.
good God, I mean, what this guy knows about liquidity, and you were talking about liquidity bonding earlier, and to some extent for the average guy, and I just consider myself an average guy, to some extent, you don't need to know it all because you can get so lost down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Understanding liquidity is important, but to the extent that this guy understands liquidity, and he sent me something yesterday, and I was like, "That's a great text, but that's going to take me 5 days to even decipher what on earth
Decipher.
you just said to
Yeah,
me."
right.
um,
Yeah.
but because he knows those things, I mean, the amount of money this guy makes on a daily basis is absurd. But if you know how to follow liquidity, if you know how to follow whale wallets, and you can see when they're putting in single-sided V3 liquidity orders, whether it's USDC or whether it's the asset that they're trying to get rid of, and understanding how that's going to play out, and then you watch what their wallet does, it's like
Yeah.
it's shooting fish in a barrel.
It's forensic
It's forensics.
finance, which I mean, it's a full-time job, but it's worth it if you have the inclination to do it. I take
Yes.
more of the simplified version. I like to kind of see which way the wind is blowing and start
Sure.
making strategic decisions based on that. But yeah, I'm sure guys like that are where we want to be pulling our information from, right? Because
Exactly.
yeah,
And the thing that, now kind of having seen that, I understand where these big institutes are going to be able to, quite honestly, manipulate the crap out of the market, because even the decentralized cryptos are manipulated by the people that have the money. And he's given me a couple examples of how it happens. The good news is that's going to benefit all of us to the point that we know when to get out.
right.
If you don't know when to get out, it's going to wreck you. And that's, basically that's the last 9 months is those that didn't know when to get out have sat there going, dang.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And I think luckily we seem to have, certainly with a lot of the projects that we're looking at, quite a bit of runway until we
Hmm.
start needing to really think about that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's going to be important for everyone here, and especially everyone listening. You can bet your bottom dollar that the two of us anyway will be keeping a very close eye on what the general consensus is as to when we should be kind of looking at exiting certain positions. So it's definitely important to keep a close eye on that and make sure that you are taking, you know, very, very consistent sentiment checks, right?
Right. Yeah. And the sentiment check is more an emotions check. Like, check your emotions, because when everything's at a fever pitch and the candles are green, 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 um, Warren Buffett says it best. When everybody's running in, that's a good time to run out. And in crypto, how many people, guilty as charged, that's why I know to ask the question, when Hex was running up to 50 cents, they were throwing in money going, oh, this is it. It's never going to fall. We
Yeah.
all did it. It's like, crap. And that was my big kick in the gut to say, okay, I need to better understand the crypto cycle. I just got sucker punched by the people that knew what they're doing.
Yep.
And but I'm gonna say this. I'm happy I did it, because what I learned is going to make me very wealthy in the future. And the PulseChain PulseX sacrifice, this is a video I'm going to be making. The fact that they're delayed, quote unquote, depending on who you ask, is
Great.
the best thing that could have happened to
It's fantastic.
99% of the people that sacrificed.
Oh,
Hands down.
100%.
The whales knew what they were doing, so they don't really count. That's the 1%. They don't care. The rest of us, it was the best thing that could have happened to you. And I'm going to make a
Totally
little
agree.
video on that. So let's leave the people. I got to bounce. I actually got to go to that day job we talk about,
Me too.
which I know you do too. So really quick, Unless you got to go, because I know you said you had something at 10 o'clock. Do you have like 2 or 3 minutes for
I've got
another?
2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, I've
Okay,
got about 15 until my next meeting.
quick. Not financial advice. This is for fun. What's your 2025 peak of the bull market price prediction for PulseX and PulseChain?
Okay, we're talking in price prediction, not
Price
necessarily
prediction, not X's,
for the
because
same
X
thing.
is irrelevant. Everybody has a different entry point. So price prediction.
2025. I mean, this is tough. I would say I would be very surprised if we weren't, and this is going to be kind of a broader scope, but I think between 5 and 10 cents is totally doable.
Ooh, which one?
Sorry. I think both have potential to get there. Depends what we see. So many variables, right? I
Yeah,
think, but
exactly.
if we take a pull, kind of a look at both of them, I think they both have this equal amounts of potential. Certainly by 2025. A lot of people I know seem to think that PulseX is going to come super strong out of the gates. Oh, sorry, PulseChain, and then PulseX may kind of catch up further down the road and then be overtaken by PulseChain. Simplifying things a lot. I think that that's probably between 5 and 10 cents by 2025, which is bullish. But
Gosh, yes.
I also think that that's the start. I think that the next cycle and the next cycle we should and hopefully will see much bigger gains. But I'm going to operate more on the bullish side because I want to be that conviction and that confidence for that that both sides of that conversation. And look, if we do anywhere near that, it's still early days for the project, and it's still going to be fantastic returns for everyone. But many of us now, and I'm telling you, will revert back to this video. A lot of us now are going to think that that is overly bullish and crazy to think about.
Right.
I don't think that's the case. I think that we have so much economic energy coming into the space. We're going to see monumental returns.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So I'm going to play a little more conservative. And Mark G brings up a good point. If you held Bitcoin in 2009, would you know when to sell? That's a different question because Bitcoin was the leader. Like that Bitcoin established the crypto market, or
You
yeah,
wouldn't
the
have known,
crypto
right? You
cycle, all
wouldn't have
this type of
known.
stuff. And
Yeah.
we still don't necessarily know. But the biggest lesson I learned outside of understanding the crypto markets is you have to take profits. You
Yeah.
have to.
Oh,
At
for
some
sure.
point, you have to take profits. Maybe not your whole bag, but I'm going to take a more conservative approach, and I'm going to say a penny to 5 cents. Now, so that's for both of them. So that's 100 to a 500x. You said 500 to 1,000x.
Yeah.
I would rather be wrong on the low side and then have somebody be mad at me like, you said it was only going to be a penny. And it's like, oh, so you got 500x. You're mad about that?
Totally understand that. I'm
Yeah.
happy to take the risk in this. I'm very confident.
And like you said, you've got tentacles in more areas that probably better understand and are giving you that hopium. I like, happiness lies in realistic expectations.
Sure.
And so I want to be happy. And by the way, I already am because I've got an awesome family and a beautiful wife and kids and all this type of stuff. So this is just fun. And by the way, 100x means I'm full-time crypto. That's all I need to walk away from the day job. So I'll set the floor at, at awesome and then expect awesomer if that's a thing. So that was a lot of fun. Ben, this has been a blast. As always, we could talk forever. It always blows my mind how fast an hour and a half goes by. It was an hour and 15 minutes, but wonderful stream. I'm going to be posting this on Twitter again. I'll be happy to send you the link if it's something that you would like to do. But everybody, all 109 of you, thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for engaging with us, asking great questions. CN, again, thank you for your generosity. Get over and support Ben Cage. As if you haven't figured it out after this phone call, he brings a very unique perspective here. And with that, have a wonderful day, everybody. All the best.
Appreciate it, guys. See you.
See ya.